Ever wondered what happened to a queen when her king was overthrown? When one 20th century king was overthrown, his queen was shot, decimated with a bayonet, drenched in acid, and buried in a communal grave with her children. Another queen was stomped to death in her sleep for appearing to be too friendly with the enemy state. Regular people committed these heinous crimes in the name of freedom. Welcome to Uncharted History. Join us today as we detail the horrific fates of queens after the king's death. Chapter 1. Marie Antoinette. When they went to the queen to tell her her subjects had no bread, do you know what she said? Let them eat cake. In reality, there are no records of the queen ever uttering such words, and yet it's rumors like these that led her to the guillotine. Marie Antoinette spent lavishly on jewelry. She borrowed money from her husband to purchase 2 diamond bracelets worth 250,000 French livres, or around $4.6 million in today's money. Her mother, Empress Maria Theresa of Austria, reprimanded her for the expensive diamond bracelet, each of which had 56 diamonds and weighed between 140 and 150 carats. However, while the queen was far from perfect, she was a victim of propaganda. Newspapers depicted her as greedy, immoral, and stupid. Some claimed Marie was promiscuous and had illegitimate children because she spent 8 barren years with Louis XVI. In reality, the king was awful in bed. When she finally gave birth, the whole court gathered to see. The queen's giving birth was a public event. That way, no one could protest the children's legitimacy. The most outrageous of all propaganda was the song about the queen having sex with her own son, and the drawing of Marie as a leopard with a human Medusa head. In a way, all of this propaganda fueled the French Revolution. In the public eye, millions suffered because the king and queen spent outrageously on jewelry and parties. When the French Revolution began in 1789, she and her husband were imprisoned at the Palace of the Tuileries in October. 1 year later, on August 10, 1792, when they stormed the Tuileries and the royal family sought asylum, they were put in Temple Prison. Louis XVI was executed on January 21, 1793. While in prison, one of Marie's children died. The queen was devastated but patiently awaited her trial. She was convicted of high treason on October 16, 1793, and sentenced to the guillotine. On the day of her execution, she was stripped of her royal garb. Wearing a simple white dress, she walked up to the scaffold with her head held high and a determined look, while the common folk threw things at her. The heavy blade fell on Marie's head at the Place de la Révolution, abolishing the monarchy. Marie Antoinette's death was swift and painless, which is more than we can say about the gut-wrenching death of Mary Queen of Scots. Mary Queen of Scots suffered the most horrific yet embarrassing death imaginable. On August 11, 1586, Mary was riding on the estate of Chartley Manor. A guard walked up to her, arrested her, and took her to Tixall Hall, a 16th century gatehouse. But before we delve into the events that led to Mary's assassination, don't forget to like and subscribe to see more videos about dark history. Before her arrest, Sir Francis Walsingham, principal secretary to Queen Elizabeth I, worked with Mary and made her believe he was helping her smuggle letters out of Chartley. In reality, Walsingham was opening, reading, and deciphering Mary's letters, forming the foundation for the Babington plot. These deciphered letters proved that Mary Queen of Scots was attempting to assassinate and replace her cousin and Protestant Queen Elizabeth I with the help of Spain. From Tixall Hall on September 21st, Mary was moved to Fotheringhay Castle. Her trial started in October, shortly after her arrival. Mary led a spirited defense and denied all charges. Unfortunately, all but one of the 36 noblemen found her guilty, and on February 1st, 1587, Queen Elizabeth I signed Mary's death warrant after short hesitancy. 1 week later, a messenger arrived in Mary's cell in the evening. He informed the Queen of Scots about her execution. Mary spent her last hours in either prayer or distributing her possessions to family members, while Fotheringhay's Great Hall was fitted with a scaffold draped with a black cloth. The next day, Mary walked up to the executioner, was blindfolded. She knelt down on the cushion and stretched out her arms. As she said her final words, "Into thy hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit," the executioner's axe struck her neck. Unfortunately, the axe missed and was lodged in the back of her head, exposing Mary to excruciating pain. The executioner struck again, but again he failed to finish the job. Her head held onto her body by a thin strip of sinew that they cut with the axe. The executioner grabbed Mary's severed head, held it up, and proclaimed, "God save the Queen." After the execution, her clothes, the scaffold, and everything else her blood touched were burned. Her body was embalmed and buried at Peterborough Cathedral in July 1587, until her son James VI ordered her mother to be moved to Westminster Abbey. Chapter 3. Empress Myeongsang. Queen Min, or Empress Myeongsang, was stomped and then decapitated in her sleep. As queen consort and wife to King Gojong, she protected her country from Japanese influence and began allying herself with the Russian Empire. In the last years of her life, Queen Min was the most powerful political figure in Korea. Unfortunately, as her power rose, so did the number of her enemies, including the king's father, the court ministers allied with Japan, and even the Korean army, trained by Japan. Surrounded by pro-Japanese political figures, the queen was a thorn in their eye, especially the Japanese lieutenant general in the Imperial Japanese Army, Miura Goro. The queen was too smart for the brutish and diplomatically illiterate Goro, so he decided to assassinate the queen with the help of the king's father. At around 5 a.m. on October 8, 1895, policemen scaled the walls of the Korean palace and opened the gates. 50 assassins entered the royal palace with the help of pro-Japanese Korean guards. Guards who opposed the plan were killed at their posts. The assassins frantically searched for the queen, and in the chaos they killed 2 servants who resembled Queen Min. Eventually, one nameless killer found the queen's sleeping chamber. He rushed to her bed, jumped on her chest 3 times, pulled out his sword, and slashed her head. While one part of the assassins burned the queen's corpse, another faction looted the palace, looking for valuable belongings. The Japanese government arrested the assassins, but they were acquitted of all charges. The silver lining in this barbaric and brutal assassination was the lavish funeral processions organized by the king in honor of his beloved wife on October 13, 1897. Another queen that was assassinated by rebels was Alexandra Feodorovna. This is the wall where Queen Alexandra, along with her husband, Nicholas II, and their 5 children met their tragic end through a hail of bullets and bayonets. In 1917, the Red and White armies were embroiled in civil war. Fearing for her family's lives, Alexandra sought refuge in the UK. When this failed, Alexandra, her 5 children, and her husband were moved to Tobolsk, Siberia, where they stayed in the former governor's mansion until October 1917. At that point, the communist Bolsheviks came to power and immediately moved the Romanov family to the Ipatiev house in Yekaterinburg. Stripped of their royal titles, the queen and king received food rations. The house was enclosed by 2 rows of 4-meter-tall wooden palisades with windows covered in newspapers and painted white. In May, the queen looked through the small Fortachka window at the top of the house, and a guard immediately fired a warning shot. 2 months later, under the instructions of the Ural Regional Soviet, Yakov Yurovsky led a group of Bolshevik revolutionaries to the Ipatiev house on the night of July 16th. The queen, along with their 5 children and the king, was escorted to the basement and lined up against the wall. Alexandra had to watch her children's terrified and crying faces while also looking at the end of a gun barrel. In the dead of the night, the Bolsheviks fired the first shot, instantly killing part of the Romanovs. Certain family members survived as the bullets ricocheted off their jewelry. However, they were then repeatedly stabbed with bayonets. The remains were transported to Kopchaki Forest. Some records claim grenades blew up their bodies. Others say they were doused with acid to prevent identification before their burial. As Yekaterinburg fell into the hands of the anti-communist White Army on July 25, 1918, the Sokolov Commission was established, trying to figure out what happened to the Romanov family. Unfortunately, before they could uncover the remains in the Kopchaki forest, the Red Army began advancing on Yekaterinburg after World War I ended, so the White Army had to retreat. For 80 years, the Soviets denied involvement in the murder of the Romanov family. In 1979, Detective Alexandra Antoinette found the burial site of the Romanov family. The remains stayed hidden until 1989 when their DNA was tested and it was determined this was the burial site of the Romanovs. In 1998, the bones of the Romanovs were reinterred at Peter and Paul Cathedral in St. Petersburg. Weak kings, suffering queens, the vicious cycle of power. If the pinned comment below this video gets 50 likes, we'll create part 2. There are a lot more instances of queens who suffered due to political turmoil. Which one do you think we should cover next? Let us know in the comments below. This is Uncharted History. See you in our next video.